Hello and welcome to the Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm looking at the 2005 miniseries, House of M. Let me preface this by saying I'm not going to do every House of M tie-in that exists. There are quite a few, and I haven't been able to get my hands on any of them. One day, hopefully, I'll cover them all at once, but for now, I'm focusing just on the main House of M story. And that story is, essentially, the direct sequel of Avengers Disassembled, which I covered last week. There, we saw Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, had been driven mad by the overwhelming responsibility of her powers that can change reality, and the loss of her two children. Unable to come to terms with the idea of living in a world without her children, she attempted to recreate them, inadvertently changing much of the rest of the world when she did. Finally forced to confront the truth, her mind has been broken, and now Magneto and Professor X have been attempting to treat her and help her heal her fractured mind. They have hidden her away in Genosha, which was once a great independent republic for mutants ruled by Magneto, but is now nothing but ruins. While they have been trying to help Wanda, the Avengers broke up and then got back together with a new team consisting of Captain America, Iron Man, Luke Cage, Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Wolverine, and the at that time recently created character, Sentry. The new Avengers will quickly find themselves having to deal with a threat to all reality created by Wanda's insanity. That threat is the topic of House of M, so let's see how it comes about and take this away. The comic opens with some establishment. We see Wanda giving birth to twins, but this is just a flashback to a reality she has created with her mind. Professor X talks her out of it, and a moment later he and Magneto discuss their failures among the ruins of Genosha. Meanwhile, in New York, the new Avengers get together with some old Avengers and some X-Men to discuss this problem. Xavier and Doctor Strange have come to realize that there may be no helping the Scarlet Witch, which means nothing but bad news for reality. This leaves the gathered heroes unsure of how to react, with some voting for death and others hoping to keep their hero cards by voting against. They end up deciding that what they need to do is see Wanda for themselves, before they make any decisions. So they all pack up and head to Genosha, only to find Wanda missing. It seems Pietro, also known as Quicksilver, Wanda's brother, caught wind of the Avengers' little meetup, and, being a mutant used to persecution for his race, immediately assumed the worst about what they would be deciding about his beloved sister. So he used his super speed to run to Genosha and warn Papa Magneto. Which is why when the new Avengers and company show up, they find themselves being hit by a bright light before waking up to find everything has changed. Spider-Man is now married and has a child. Captain America is an old man. Kitty Pryde is a school teacher who says in her class that Namor was the first mutant ever, which seems to suggest Apocalypse doesn't exist in this reality, but some of the bonus information in the back tells us otherwise. Scott Summers and Emma Frost are happily married, Dazzler is a talk show host, Doctor Strange is a psychiatrist in the Sentry, and a nice little joke about the state of insanity that plagues the character in the pages of New Avengers is one of his patients. We see several more changes, but most pertinent is when Wolverine wakes up to discover himself in bed with Mystique. Wait, she was disguised as a redhead for his redhead fetish? Mystique is already a redhead. I mean, I get this is just a reference to his feelings for Jean, but Mystique is already a redhead. Wolverine runs from the room only to find himself on a helicarrier in a fleet of helicarriers. Which brings us up to the end of issue 2 already. As I've said before in other reviews of Bendis written comics, Bendis is many things as a writer, but fast-paced and to the point is not one of them. Wolverine is seeing flashes of his life, his whole life, most of which should be things he has forgotten by now, and that includes the recent events we saw in the first issue. Realizing that something's wrong with the world that he needs to figure out, and that Mystique is going to follow him wherever he goes, Wolverine decides to just jump like a crazy person off the helicarrier. This buys him a moment of alone time, giving him a chance to figure out what the hell is going on. He starts out by checking the newspaper for some info, giving us a little nod to another series Bendis was writing at the time, The Pulse. And we learn that the M in House of M apparently stands for Magnus. And hey, is that a reference to the Children of the Atom video game? Sweet. This article is basically a text dump since we wasted 3 issues already on not explaining anything, so here's pretty much everything you need to know at once. The basic idea is that Wolverine halo jumped into a world where mutants are the majority, and the top of society. while humans are a fading, dying minority. Magneto, from the House of Magnus in Genosha, essentially rules the world. Peacefully, they say, though there's plenty of evidence to suggest otherwise, including Wolverine's own status as a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. With all of that nasty exposition stuff out of the way, it's back to the plot. Wolverine checks the X-Men mansion for Xavier, only to find the place to be a bit more suburban in this reality. He then goes to try and find Stark to presumably get some Avengers help, but he's ambushed by Mystique and her crew who want to drag him home. A fight breaks out, and in attempting to escape, he finds himself helped along by some recognizable faces, with Cloak pulling him into some kind of superhero underground led by Luke Cage. And hey, look who's still alive in this universe. Good for you, Hawkeye. Hawkeye removes the tracker in Wolverine's neck that Mystique used to find him earlier in the most lethal possible way. He's fine though, of course, but before he can explain to anybody why he's there, they're attacked by some creepy anti-sentinels sent to hunt down regular humans, or sapiens as they're called here, in this shot that's very reminiscent of one from Days of Future Past. The group manages to escape, and Wolverine quickly explains to Luke and the others all about Avengering and the plot of Disassembled and Magneto as a villain, not a world leader. Wolverine is sure that he can remember the way the world is supposed to be because of the number of times he's been mind-wiped in his life. Which, I'm not sure that makes sense. Seems like people being able to mind-wipe him so easily so many times suggests that he's actually just really susceptible to mind-wiping, but I guess we needed some excuse to get this problem rolling, so why not? But there's one other person able to remember things, which is why Luke chooses to believe Wolverine. But when this person came to him, they showed him his other life, which means he's already remembered everything, but he still asked Wolverine during his explanation, what's an Avenger? That makes no sense to me, but okay. This other person is the New Mutant, Layla Millar. She's the same character that would come to join Peter David's new X-Factor detective agency after this, where everyone will become accustomed to her explaining who she is with the snarky line of, I know stuff. Here, she isn't yet fully aware that she's a mutant, and so hasn't yet developed that particular affectation. That doesn't stop them from using her as a bit of Deus Ex Machina for a little Blues Brothers style getting the band back together segment. Once they decide they have enough heroes on their side, they head out for Genosha to get Magneto, because they're convinced he's the one who altered the world. On top of that, it looks like he gave them all what their hearts desired, or close enough to it so that nobody would be willing to fight it. But hold on a minute there, you're saying Mystique wanted to be Wolverine's direct subordinate and lover, and Luke Cage wanted to be an underground mob boss, and Doctor Strange wanted to be a psychiatrist, and the Sentry wanted to be a normal crazy person rather than a superpowered one? Having all woken up from their dream lives, everyone is pretty pissed about what Magneto has done, so they decide their normal self-imposed morals and restrictions don't apply to this situation. Even Cyclops declares that they need to not hold back, which seems a little out of character for him, I'm gonna be honest, but I guess we can argue that he's assuming the world will just go back to normal if they succeed in their mission. So the group attacks and a big fight erupts, but it's largely intended as distraction. While the main group is keeping Magneto busy, another group goes in search for Professor Xavier, believing him a key link in freeing them from Magneto's dream world. It seems in this universe, though, he's dead. Although no one's really able to confirm that, as they're unable to even find his bones, just a memorial for him. Doctor Strange, meanwhile, goes to visit Wanda, who in this universe is supposed to be human, not mutant. It's quickly apparent that's not the case though, and to no one's surprise, she once again has her children back. Strange quickly realizes it wasn't Magneto that influenced Wanda into changing the world, it was Pietro. Wanting to save his sister from the doom he was sure was coming, he convinced her to use her powers for a hopefully positive change, making everyone she cared about happy so that nobody would want her dead. Strange still wants to turn things back to how they were though, and tries to find out where Xavier is. Before he can though, Hawkeye shows up, having been told already that Wanda killed him, and he strikes back at her in anger. So, in defense, she kills him. Again. I'd say it sucks to be Hawkeye, but that should already be obvious. While they're distracted, Magneto gets his memories back thanks to Layla Millar, and in anger lashes out at his own son for his meddling, striking him dead with a giant metal rock. Looking upon her dead brother, Wanda realizes that even after giving Magneto everything he wants, he's still a supervillain at heart. So she decides to correct her mistake in the opposite direction, declaring no more mutants before a violent flash of light erupts. Once again, everyone is waking up, but this time they seem to be back in the normal universe, except a few things are still amiss. Doctor Strange, for one, looks like he's been mugged. Wolverine, for some reason, still remembers his whole life, and the X-Men quickly realize that many mutants have lost their powers. Emma Frost checks Cerebra to confirm her suspicions that the mutants just aren't mutants anymore. The world is somehow already locked into investigations and reactions to what they are calling the mutant epidemic that caused so many mutants to simply lose their powers. This includes a little message from Reverend William Stryker, declaring that he foresaw this coming all along, an anti-mutant message that will help him develop the Purifiers that will prove to be such an important group of villains plaguing the X-Men in the years to come. Only those who were there for the final battle and thus were protected both by Strange's spells and Emma's psychic link are able to remember the world of M and all that transpired there. There's a brief aside here where the new Avengers run to investigate and alert that someone is at the Avengers mansion, only to find a weird hint that Hawkeye might still be alive, or alive again, including a newspaper clipping that uses as its picture that image of Wanda, Quicksilver, and Hawkeye when they first joined the Avengers, back in the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby issue we got a few pages from at the end of Disassembled. No one knows where Xavier or Wanda are, so they run to Genosha but only find a depowered Magneto, who doesn't have the answers they're looking for. The comic ends with a glimpse of Wanda, who seems to have fixed her own brain, possibly having removed her own mutant powers, wandering through a marketplace somewhere, while a voiceover narration from Hank Pym informs us that energy can be neither created nor destroyed. So all that energy that the mutants lost had to go somewhere. So we pull back from the Earth to get a little hint of where that energy might be. And on that ominous note, we get to the breakdown. Well, anyone who's been around for a few of my videos knows I love alternate universe stories, and House of M definitely appeals to that interest in me. While I might complain about Bendis' tendency to waste time, I found the basic structure of the story to be pretty strong. In fact, I actually find myself wishing that House of M had gone on for even longer than it did, giving us a chance to really delve deep into the differences between the worlds. I would have also liked the effects of the story to have lasted longer, but instead the success of this and Disassembled convinced Marvel to do a new summer event that drastically affected every title every single year, removing the chance to really let the effects of this series sink in on most of the titles running at the time. But that's not the fault of this series. From this series, I would have liked to see more time in the development process focused on how this different world would have led to drastically different lives for all these people, instead of leaving it feeling like a bizarre middle ground where some of it came about due to the differences and some of it came about due to wish fulfillment, and your guess is as good as mine as to which is which. The art, for the most part, I find pretty strong, especially the coloring work, though I find some of Capiel's art to be honestly creepy. Sometimes that's in a good way, like in how super eerie the world of M's Sentinels are, and sometimes that's just in the regular way, like in how super creepy Wanda's kids are. I mean, look at that. So creepy. So creepy. So I'm giving this series a recommendation level of high. I could see those first few issues where nothing is happening being really annoying for people collecting the issues individually, but collected together, the story really works for me. And this is probably the most interesting route they could have gone with as a follow-up to Disassembled. The collected edition of House of M gets one House of M emblem, which, by the way, is a clever little hint itself at the twist ending, seeing as it's designed to be an M, as in Magneto or Magnus, but is also just basically the Scarlet Witch's mask. Anyway, the collection, at least the one I could find, is amazing, filled with a metric ton of extras. Not just all covers in place with alternate covers next to them, but a section in the back titled Secrets of the House of M that contains a massive amount of information pages on the House of M universe background of pretty much every Marvel character that gets seen, a section titled Mutant Week that is an actually created issue of a magazine with more bonuses, and the full issue of The Pulse that we saw briefly in the story itself. Add on to that an interview with Bendis, the original script for issue 1, and a bonus art gallery, and you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. This is definitely one of the more worthwhile Marvel collections I've seen. Thanks everybody for watching. Only one more week left until we hit a full year of this channel. Woohoo! Thanks to everybody who's been sticking around with me and everyone who's come along for the ride. Hopefully we can keep this channel going and growing for another year. Thanks again everybody who's already here, and I hope to see you next time, right here in the Comic Cave.